when they come out here. They're like, oh, it's 65 in San Francisco, but 65 in San Francisco is very different from 65 anywhere else because the wind is just like brutal here. So you could tell who like the tourists are because they're walking around in like a t-shirt, and then suddenly they're walking around in a brand new purchased North Face jacket or something. They have to go and buy one. If you don't like the weather, wait a minute. I feel
It's
like
really deceptive.
Couple of minutes more. Start at 5 past.
It's really deceptive because it's so sunny, which, you know, in my Texas head means, oh, it's going to be hot outside.
Yeah, no. You're still unlearning that, Aaron?
No, I think I got it now.
Is it humid in San Francisco? Is it like humid?
No, well,
moist.
It's foggy. There is humidity here, which is actually like really nice because like whenever I go visit my family in Philly in the winter, it's extremely dry. And so like my skin, you know, gets all scratchy and stuff. But out here, because it's constantly foggy, you know, it's good. Good weather for the skin, I would say.
I do prefer like dry heat because like
far and away.
It's humid heat. It's just not heat. Like the heat isn't the problem. Everything else is the problem.
No, the humidity. I did one semester, a summer semester in college in Atlanta. And if you've never been in the South during the summer and felt the humidity there, it's literally like trying to swim to class. That's how thick the humidity is. It was not a good time at all. Erin's just like nodding her head knowingly.
No, I have fully acclimated. Last visited Texas in the summer. I like as soon as I got off the plane, and like was in the jet bridge, it was like this wall of like wet heat hit me. Like, oh no, what have I done? This was a mistake.
So happy because I won't forget to hit the record button, which is something that a lot of us event organizers don't do. Okay, so I think it's time to start. Let's see, everything is okay. Okay, so second this. Okay, so recording. Okay, so hello everyone. I'm Roger, though you may know me as Roger Orit. I'm the event host for today. Today we'll be talking. Well, you probably know about the behind the scenes of Level Up, but this program, Roblox started about a year ago. So first of all, I'd like to thank the panelists today, which are Dan, DSPAV, and Erin, or also Breakfast Candy. I'm actually quite excited to host this event. I think it's going to be quite interesting to know a bit what happens behind like programs on Roblox, because usually we see the front, but not the back. So having said this, I'll let you two present yourself.
I pick Erin first. Go.
All right. All right. Hi, I'm Erin. I am a senior game designer on Dan's Game Insights team at Roblox. About 11 years of experience in the game industry, mostly in mobile free-to-play. And I've been at Roblox for about 2 years now. And in addition to being a member of the Game Insights team, I run the Level Up program, which I assume you all know what it is since you are here, but just in case, it is a event and video series that the Game Insights team puts on in order to share game design, game development best practices with the developer community.
That's right, Erin. Your 2-year anniversary is coming up next month. I believe you joined in May of 2020. Yeah. Well, hi everyone. I'm Dan. I'm the lead game designer on the Game Insights team at Roblox. I have the proud title of game designer #1 at the company, the first person with the game designer title. I joined 3 years ago, involved in various things, you know, one-on-one consultancy with some developers. I'm a mentor for the Accelerator group as well as Erin, and then, you know, work alongside Erin to produce Level Up. Also have about 11 years game industry experience, particularly in systems and economy design. So I'm the nerd who sits in Excel all day, as you've probably seen on Level Up, and does all the fun math that nobody else wants to do. But yeah, great to be here. Thanks for inviting us, Roger.
Great. And since I'm a bit I forget about things. I haven't presented myself actually. So I start again. Hello, I'm Roger. I'm the event host for today. I'm mainly a scripter. I've been on the platform since 2013, been developing since 2015. Um, yeah, that's a bit what I've forgotten. Okay, so a big let's try to explain a bit how this event it will work. So we will first have about an hour of panel, and then we have about 20 minutes of Q&A. For the Q&A, we'll use the built-in Q&A system that Bevy has, which you can see is under the chat section. We will enable you to be able to post your questions, and then you will be able to upvote them if you like them. Remember to upvote the question you want to be answered, because that would help us a lot. That would help us a lot to be able to go through the questions. The panel will be divided in about like two sections, one an introduction section and then the rest. So if everything is okay, I think let's just start the panel. Okay, so go a bit. So what are your roles inside Level Up and the Game Insights team?
Sure. So I'll go first this time. Yeah. So I lead the Game Insights team. So we do various things both internally and externally. Really, the whole idea around originally hiring a game designer for Roblox was that I think the best analogy I've ever heard for Roblox is it's kind of like the Australia of the game industry, where it was off on its own for so long, which had these wonderful effects where it sort of grew up unique from the game industry and has its own quirks and its own special things. And one of the things about Roblox I find so amazing is that you have the vast majority of the community grew up on the platform, found a passion for making games, and then just started making games, which is very different from elsewhere in the industry where you go to college traditionally, you graduate, then you get a job and you slowly learn on the job, right? So we joined with the intent to bring some of that industry knowledge from outside of Australia into Australia to sort of share with the community, while also learning about the platform to provide insights internally and externally to different developers. So my role has sort of shifted around during the years, but right now I sort of run the Game Insights team, and that includes both Level Up and working with Aaron, who owns the program and runs it, as well as working on various other initiatives, with product teams internally as well as with developers externally. So.
Okay, and so I'm a member of the team. We also have Kale, who goes by Dinosmore, who is not here today because he has his own initiatives that he runs separate from Level Up, but he is big support for that. So I am primarily a content designer. So narrative, world building, text, quests, things like that kind of falls under my purview. Also, TUI, so first time user experience, onboarding, and tutorials. I also specialize in UI and UX. So on the Game Insights team, that's kind of my domain. So if we have accelerators with questions on those topics, or videos that we're doing for Level Up, for example, those are the areas that I focus on.
Great. So about a year ago, you created Level Up. So I think about like March last year. So what was like the idea behind it? Like what objectives did you have? Like at least the initial ones when you were creating it.
Well, Dan, you mentioned this, that the Game Insights team was kind of formed to help share those games industry best practices with developers. And, we spend a lot of time doing little one-on-one consultations with teams, be they the accelerator teams or through our larger deep dives. And Dan realized, and I'm speaking for him, sorry, Dan, that we could scale up those efforts, that information is really valuable to the entire developer community. And so that's kind of where Level Up came from, was the idea that we should find a way to broadcast that more widely.
Yeah, it's really a passion that both Aaron and I share, because we both went to school for game design and game development. And a frustration that we shared was there wasn't a lot of practical information that you learned. You learn sort of workload and things like that, but you don't learn how to like balance a feature or how to design content or something like that. And a lot of that you really have to learn on the job, and you have to learn it via like word of mouth or from your seniors on the team who sort of teach you that thing. And so really we wanted to sort of, in the same way Roblox is kind of like democratized game development on the platform, we wanted to democratize game design knowledge. And that's really our goal with Level Up, is to sort of share those best practices with as wide of an audience as possible.
We
So-
really are.
Oh no, yeah, go ahead. Go
Oh
ahead.
yeah. So we're really trying to hit, the entire developer community. So all levels, whether they're beginners or, been doing this for years and years. And no matter what phase of development they're in as well, if they're just starting out, designing their core loop for their first game, or if they are in the middle of content cadence on that treadmill during live ops. So we're trying to cover the whole gamut.
Yeah, I actually, for example, for what you're saying about like trying to cover, I think it's really interesting some of the topics that were covered. For example, one of the most recent ones about so partnership and branded games. That one I found like I know that I probably won't work in anything related to that, but I did find it really interesting because in a way it doesn't like we think that if you do like game design you only do game design. If you work about like you're the one who's contacting others. I think we think that we only do that, and I think especially maybe in other sectors it is like that, but in game development, considering especially Roblox, yeah, you could have some big studios, but usually it's small size. It's maybe one, two, three. So I think it's actually quite helpful to learn things that you by yourself would never like think about. Oh, how can I do it? And other than that, it's like really interesting to see. Okay, how can I take this that maybe isn't related to branded games and then adapt it to that concept? So, having had the program for around a year, do you think that you've been able to achieve those objectives? Is there something that has changed from your objectives?
Yeah. Okay. So I can take that one. I think that we have certainly made progress. So, like you mentioned, we've been at this for a year now. We have held, I think, 14 events and put out 22 videos. So, we are achieving that goal of getting that information out. We've got about 6,000 subscribers now on the Developer Relations YouTube channel, of which Level Up is the majority of the content. So yeah, I think progress is being made. I think there's always a question of how can we improve our presentation of content. How can we make it more interactive for developers, make it more interesting, easier to consume. And those are things that we're working on now. We're doing some experimentation to try to make it, even more useful as a resource.
Yeah, I would say it's an ongoing process for us. I think it's very important for everyone to know that we are not YouTubers or YouTube professionals or even people who are necessarily comfortable being in front of a camera. And so really when we started Level Up, we kind of just took our best shot on goal for what we thought would be effective. And like true game designers, we've just been iterating ever since. So I think a big push this year, and hopefully you've seen, is we're trying to create some shorter videos for people like me who have the attention span of a fly, right? 10 minutes is just enough that I could actually sit down and actually watch it. But we're trying all these different formats and doubling down on the ones that are getting traction. So I think it's going to be an ever growing, ever changing process where we're really trying to find our sweet spot, right? Like we tried multiple panelists for roundtables. That worked out really well. We've tried more interactive workshops. So it's not just like a college lecture where you're sitting there falling asleep while I'm talking about core loops. And so I think we're really happy with what we've achieved so far. And we're constantly looking forward on how we can make it a better experience for everyone, which is why we're always hounding about filling out surveys at the end of Level Up events.
Yes, please.
So, like mentioning the developer feedback is there something that the attendees of Level Up have like been telling you that? So, what changes have you made based on their feedback?
Oh yeah. Too long. Aaron, you probably know this more than me. Too long was one that we got from several prominent developers. They wanted more interactive. Aaron had mentioned earlier, we're trying to hit the entire funnel of developers, from those who have literally opened up Studio yesterday to those who have like top games on the platform. And when you're doing that, not every topic's going to apply to everyone. But I think early on, we thought maybe we'll start super high level and basics, and then we'll work our way down. And one of the big pieces of feedback was, this is cool and all, but can we get more technical? I want more practical stuff that I can actually use, right? Right, Aaron. I'll toss it over to Aaron, but I think those are the big ones I can think of.
Yeah, they were for sure, and it was fair, totally fair. The criticism that they were too long, like our workshop videos are 2 hours, and that makes more sense when you're attending the event, and you're able to ask your questions live, and especially if there's interactivity, like it takes time to do those exercises, and that's all I think fine for an event. But then it's a whole different thing when you're trying to create the video and make that useful to the audience who wasn't able to attend. And so, yeah, we're having to adapt to that. We've started structuring our workshops so that they are easily broken up into segments. So like the quest writing one is in 3 parts that cover, the basics, and then design, and then writing. So you can watch any one of those that interests you, or you can watch them all, but you're not expected to sit through an entire 2-hour video and scrub through it and look for what's interesting to you. So yeah, like Dan said, constantly iterating.
Something I found from like the level ups is that usually usually what happens in most events is like, okay, so you do your content and then you do your Q&A at the end. So something I found that it's actually quite interesting because, for example, I have bad memory for a lot of things. If you're talking about some topic and then I have to remember at the end after an hour and a half about that topic to ask, I think it's a bit. I would usually forget, and also it's a bit like harder for the panelists to like get back there. And something that I think is actually quite helpful, which I don't know if that's how you started it, is that so it's usually like panel Q&A. So you have like combining it, and something I really that may for others maybe it's not, but like the after parties in a way, because it's a way of like, so it's not that formal, so you can ask questions much easier, and it's like you also like, so you can go off topic a bit, but it's still because in those talks that there, as you said, there's people who maybe just open, well, not maybe just open studio, but who have 1-2 years of experience, and there's others who have maybe 10 years of experience. So I think it's also a way of meeting and asking maybe those people who usually you would not be able to reach or attend some question. So have you had any experience hosting these types of events before? So I guess one of the main challenges you found was probably like adjusting the time or something like that. But what were your main challenges when starting?
I just want to preface this by saying thank goodness for Missimo. She's our producer, because she does have experience with events and also with YouTube, neither of which are things that Dan or I had any experience with previously. So,
And there's nothing post can't fix.
Yes. Had done some video editing, so that was useful. But no experience doing any of this sort of thing. In terms of challenges, like logistics are a big one always, especially now that we've started having multi-team panels for our roundtables. Trying to schedule people from different teams has been a little challenging, but Missimo is handling that for us. So thank you, Missimo. Yeah, Dan, what do you got?
Previous to this, I think probably the biggest hosting thing that I did was like RDC 2019, like giving a talk to 100 people, which was nerve-wracking. And I think Roblox in general has been a brand new experience, because when you're game developing, you're not really giving a speech to a big audience of people, right? At most, it's maybe like 10 other people in a room that you're sort of pitching your feature to, and they're people that you've worked with for over a year or something. So to go from that to standing in a room of 100 people and giving a talk to now being on YouTube is definitely not something I expected to occur in my career, but it seems to be going well so far. So, yeah.
So you've been mentioning panels, workshops. So can you explain a bit like what both of those events are like? What are the main difference and the main like challenges you have when doing each of them?
Sure. Yeah. So workshops, like Dan mentioned, are kind of more lecture based. It's one of the Game Insights team members, so me, Dan, or Kale, so far just kind of doing a presentation, and then more recently trying to make it interactive as well. So there's some hands-on elements, and also including some resources that developers can take away from it. So documentation examples, templates they can use to create their own documentation. Dan did this amazing spreadsheet for balancing a season pass feature. So things like that. When we really want to get deep into a topic, we go with a workshop. But roundtables are panel discussions, and that's really where we want our developers to do the talking. They are developers who have proven success, who are already demonstrating these best practices and can speak with authority on them and why those practices have contributed to their success. And so we've found that they're a very useful voice for that, because they are this example. Everyone has played these games, they're familiar with them, and they want to know how they've done what they've done. So yeah, I think there's good reason to listen to them, maybe even more than us, because they've been successful on this platform.
Yeah, and just to sort of plus one that, I think the main thing with roundtables is we've just observed over the years, doesn't matter how knowledgeable or experienced we are in a certain game design topic, we've just found universally that the community learns much better from other developers than they do from us. So it was really important for us to get developers in that we identify that are doing best practices on the platform, and having them sort of speak for themselves and the work that they do to the community at large. So I think that's really the spirit of the roundtables. We actually, Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, the original idea was just workshops. And then after a while, we started to think like, do people really want to hear us talk every single video, or would it be better to have somebody like a Minitoon or an Arithia on to talk about what they actually do best? And so that's really where the roundtable idea sort of came from. So
maybe have you thought about having a workshop and a panel combined in a way? So instead of having it so it's a boring 2-hour lecture, having it so it's like discuss it at the start and then see how that's applied.
yeah, that's definitely an idea. And I think that's really in the spirit of RDC, where our developers are doing that. I think one of our sub goals that we don't really announce is, these developers are very busy with their actual jobs, not necessarily sort of contributing to Level Up. So we try to take as little of their time as possible, because very often they have these big releases that they're trying to work on or whatever else. So just by virtue of having to do a workshop, we can speak from experience. That's something that takes us a long time to sort of put together, in terms of outlines and what are the content we're going to cover, and then how to walk through it step by step. The amount of time it takes me, for example, to put together a season pass is much less than the amount of time it takes to sort of talk through it with other people. And so that is kind of an added element. So I think for sure that would definitely be a great sort of format. It might be more appropriate for a bigger event like RDC than something throughout the year. But I mean, Aaron, I don't know. I toss it over to you. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that is a really cool idea, and that's something that we can explore. I think Dan, you hit on my concern too, is taking up too much time of our panelists, but that's something also that maybe we can do a little less formally on Guilded. We do have this community now where some of the feedback that we got from our developers was that they want more opportunities to network and to hear from each other. Sometimes they feel isolated, especially if they're just a little one-person team, something like that. They don't have friends that share their passion for development. So part of the goal for spinning up that Guilded is to give them the opportunity to network, and maybe in a less structured kind of way, we could have developers helping each other through Guilded as well.
Okay, so I saw you made a short. I don't know if that was experimenting, the short about analytics that Dan released. If that was maybe some experiment you're trying to see if it will work, something like that.
We did a couple of shorts actually. We did one on core loops, we did one on analytics, we did one on prototyping, and that's part of our initiative this year to try and create a wide range of content that can appeal to different people. So if you don't have time to sit through and parse a 2-hour video, hopefully you can get some useful insights from like a quick 10-minute lecture that we give. So we definitely have more of those planned and more on the way. Actually, I think the ball is in Erin's court right now for the next short.
Calling
But
me out.
yeah, calling her out. No, but Erin has so much going on right now. She just we haven't had the time. But that is definitely like we've gotten a lot of positive feedback on those shorts, and it's definitely something that we want to pursue in the future. Yeah.
So you're talking about that you want to like try to cover a big range of topics, so it's like you can like developers can see all of them. So how are like topics chosen? Are you like, oh hey, maybe I want to talk to this developer, and then okay, so let's take what we can talk about with them, or is it like the other way around? So we think about what we will talk about, and then like just try to find who we can talk with.
It has been the other way around up to this point, where we have a list of topics that we want to cover. We have playlists now on YouTube, so we have these large and like high level topics that these videos fall into, and we try to think about where's the greatest impact, what are the greatest needs of the community in terms of these best practices, and then it's just a matter of figuring out what developers would best present that information, who are the best examples of here's it being done really well on the platform. So yeah, after we kind of lay out topics, then we start trying to brainstorm developers to reach out to, and then from there it's getting it on the roadmap, depending on their schedules.
So like okay, so like you choose the topic, choose the speaker. So how do you like once it's chosen? How do you like contact them? How like what are the main challenges you have when organizing all this? Probably the most helpful thing is Missimo, as you said. But
Well,
so yeah, what are like the main challenges in organizing deals?
I would say one of the benefits of being in developer relations is that we happen to know most of the developer community, because by virtue of being developer relations, we're kind of interfacing with them every day. So if I don't know the person directly, or Erin doesn't know, then maybe Missimo knows, maybe somebody else on DevRel. So somebody has a connection and get us in touch. But Erin, I think you're mostly involved with the headache of logistics on this, so I'll toss it over to you.
Yeah, I mean, occasionally it's heartbreaking. We get turned down, or maybe we just, yeah. But that doesn't happen often, but it happens, and totally understandable. But not everyone's comfortable being on YouTube forever. That is something I've had to get over myself. So, but then also just logistics scheduling. So it's sometimes challenging. Sometimes we'll do a shuffle on our roadmap. Roadmap's really a suggestion rather than actual plan. So we just have to be flexible. But it's happy to say that so far I think we've done a pretty good job of picking those topics, and also developers who represent those really well, and actually keeping up a cadence pretty reasonably well getting these videos out.
Yeah, I think we've also been very surprised to find just the eagerness and willingness of the community. But when we started out, we're like, oh, are we bugging them? Are we bothering them? But very often there's a lot of enthusiasm to be on and sort of share the knowledge, which is one of the things I really love about the Roblox developer community, is there's so much willingness to sort of share that knowledge with one another. And you don't necessarily get that elsewhere in the industry, where it's much more of a business, and you want to be hush hush and sort of keep your secrets to yourself.
Secret sauce.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, very true.
So you mentioned a bit like the roadmaps. I've noticed you've recently been doing more events, like the time between like the events has like been shortened. Is that so? I guess your main idea is to do like one a month, maybe.
Mm-hmm. We had previously kind of been trying to do a workshop and a roundtable every month, and that was not sustainable. But like Dan said, those workshops really take quite a bit of time and energy to get them right. So we've started focusing more on the roundtables, getting those out regularly, and then trying to fill in when we have time with workshops or more recently with the shorts. And we're also going to, starting next week, start pulling out clips from our existing videos and just sharing those as well. So specific questions that we thought were really insightful and answered very well by our panelists in particular. I'm going to start sharing those as well so that we have more of a constant drip of content. And again, in more consumable ways. You don't have to watch the entire roundtable to, hear how, Minitoon answers a particular question about level design, for example.
You mentioned all those shorts. So do you plan on having like some way of maybe so the community can ask, oh, maybe we'd like to know this, then maybe like pull up the files and let's see if it's there. So I guess through the YouTube comments, but is there any other way you have planned?
So I think probably Gilded is going to be our big hub for that. So in terms of like asking for topics to be covered in videos, that's something that we're going to be talking to our Gilded community about. And then we also have all of our videos in Gilded as well, and they're all tagged. So I think you can search for a particular topic, and then just the videos that are relevant to that will come up.
So you've covered like many topics. Yes, I think you said you've done 20 something events. So is there any topic that you still haven't covered that you're like really excited to talk about, or like
So many.
Tons.
So many. Yeah. I mean, so for me personally, I've only done like one economy talk outside of like RDC 2019, and there's so many other topics there. There's like loot tables and drops for monsters. There's like combat balance. There's all sorts of things that we would love to get to, but I think because we're like a 2-man crew most of the time, well, 3 with Missimo. I don't want to discount Missimo. But like in terms of generating topics, there's only 2 of us and there's only so much time. And the bizarre thing as well is like, that's only a % of our day-to-day job. So in addition to trying to get all that content out, we have all these other sort of things that we're chasing throughout the day. But I don't think we're going to run out of content anytime soon. I don't know, Aaron, what do you think?
No. We have a list of topics that's pretty long, things that we want to cover. For me, the things that I'm really passionate about that I haven't gotten to cover yet, there's tutorial design, first time user experience, UI, UX, accessibility. So those are all things that we would love to cover as well. And it's just a matter of, getting it on the roadmap, and in case of roundtables, like finding developers who can speak to it as well.
Yeah, like in true game dev fashion, we have this backlog of features we would love to have on Level Up and negative amount of time to actually get it done. Like I think one I keep throwing out to Aaron, but I don't know how feasible it is like a design doctor segment where we sit down with a dev and just go through their game and sort of like point out areas where they could improve or optimizations or how to fix their economy and stuff. But there's definitely a lot of exciting ideas that we have and just not enough time in the day to sort of do it.
So maybe related to that, like what you could do is maybe like through the Gilded open, like, okay, so let's say we're going to discuss like, okay, so you give us like our designs or some problems you've been having and then try to apply them. Because at the end, I think it's also seeing where people fail is a way to, more than where people fail, like it's like what problems have happened is a way to like avoid them. Because, oh yeah, if you see like, oh yeah, we did this and it worked and it's like, okay, but I can't do it. So
Yeah,
how do I fix my problem?
That's definitely, actually, we skipped over that, Aaron, earlier, but that is one of the biggest pieces of feedback we always get is like more practical examples. And I think we've been like trying to incorporate that into like our roundtables and visuals and things like that. But we're always striving towards more and more Roblox specific examples that we can apply in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I think like 2 points. Yes, absolutely. Like seeing seeing something that's gone wrong and trying to fix it is a really great way to learn. I think the challenge is going to be finding a volunteer willing to sign up for that. Like, yes, roast me, you know. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, like we've discussed it, and that's something that I still think would be really valuable. So it's just going to come down to, you know, can we find somebody to let us
Who's the brave soul? Yeah.
have a conversation with? And the other thing is, like, we love our friends in the legal department, but initially when we started the program, they were much more conservative about you know, the big themes that we could talk about. And so we ended up having to like invent fake games to use as examples in some of our workshops and things like that. But recently, having seen the work that we've done and the educational context, they have decided that we can reference games off Roblox even and use those as examples. So hopefully very soon, next time we start putting out some shorts or workshops, something like that, we'll have more concrete examples that we can point to. It's like, here's how this game does this, whether they're on Roblox or not. Hopefully on Roblox, like we always try to find examples from the platform. But yeah.
Yeah, that's true. For a while there, we could only talk about like the game that we were specifically focusing on for that like workshop. So like Red Manta was the first one, and all of our examples had to come from Red Manta throughout like all of our talks and stuff. But yeah, that's a good point. Forgot about that part.
So you mentioned you gave a talk about one in RDC 2019, Dan. So
Yes.
what are like the main difference you see between like, okay, so doing level up and giving a talk at RDC, other than one being online, the other being virtual? What?
Yeah, that's a good question. You have a lot more time to prepare for RDC. So they kind of like settle on topics for RDC about, I want to say 4 or 5 months in advance. So you have 4 or 5 months to get your talk together. And then it goes through like a whole review process of like the marketing team and, you know, whoever's running RDC to make sure it's right. Actually, all of the RDC topics go all the way up to Dave, and Dave approves them. So like you have to pitch that there. Whereas like with Level Up, you know, it's just our skeleton crew here, and we kind of like decide what topics are going to be most impactful, and we kind of execute on it. And then given the aggressive schedule we try to have for Level Up, you only have about 4 weeks to get it from concept to presentation by the end. So it's definitely a bit more frantic than RDC is. But I think on the plus side of Level Up, maybe for me, is it's more nerve-wracking for me to stand up in front of 100 people and give a talk than it is to be on a stream where I can kind of like stare at my camera or something instead of this audience of people. So I think there's like pros and cons to each of those. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, we control the editing process on Level Up. So if there's something that we really want to take out, we can remove it ourselves. So
Yeah, that's right. So like if you've ever seen the video, I've never said this word before in real life, but like I was so nervous, I said "wroten down" instead of "written down." Like we would edit that out to make me look much more intelligent on our YouTube video when we go on Level Up. But you know, for RDC, they kind of just uploaded the video, and it's kind of what it is. So yeah,
Yeah, as Railrock says, gotta fix it in post.
that's right.
So throughout this year, so you said that you started with, oh, people said that they're too long. Like, what are the things you've seen that help the discussion not be like too boring, too long? So what do you think are tools people can do to try to keep people's attention and make it still interesting, even though you maybe gone over an hour?
Yeah, I would say for me, and this was more just needing practice being in front of a camera and running this kind of format. But initially, I was kind of just reading. When we do a Level Up event, a round table, we kind of put together some topics and some questions that we want to talk through with the panelists. And I kind of have that on the side just as like notes for myself on where we're going. Originally, I was basically just reading off of that, and it kind of came off very mechanical and sort of practiced. And more so these days, we've shifted, and this is sort of the benefit as well of bringing in multiple panelists, not just a single team. It's less of an interrogation now and more of a conversation. And that's really what we're trying to drive towards, is rather than reading from the list A, B, C, D, I read the initial topic, and then from there I try and drive some organic conversation. So based off of what they're saying, I'm sort of trying to drive it into a certain way. We encourage the panelists to sort of hop in and ask each other questions as well. I think that was one of the things, we just recently on Thursday did a level up with Creecraft and Wonderworks, and obviously they're YouTubers, so they're practicing this, but they were really good at sort of riffing off of one another and making my job a lot easier. So I think that's one of the things we sort of shifted to over time, is more conversational and less interrogation. I don't know, Erin, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think like you hit all the points for roundtables. If I had anything to add, it might be that I think that most recent one, with Creek and with Wonderworks, they had an established relationship already, and so they weren't strangers thrust in this panel together, right? They knew each other, they had worked together, and so I think that helped as well with just nerves and also being able to plus one each other, talking about things. So yeah, that's for roundtables. For workshops, I would say, Dan had mentioned interactivity before, really finding ways to have like hands-on exercises in those events where, we might have a little bit of lecture up front where we're explaining, the foundations of what we're going to be talking about, but then like, here's the practical example. Like you're going to build a spreadsheet yourself, like as we walk through step by step to balance a season pass. Kale had a really great one where he was doing player goals and the different types of players, and so he created this worksheet where you decide what types of players you're going to focus on for your game, and then what goals should come out of that. And so things like that allow people to like follow along but actually do work and apply it to their game, because every game is so different, and we can talk theory at you all the time, but it's actually practical, and you can apply it to your game and see how that, even though like all these games are different, and for example like tutorials, you need to decide like who is my audience, what are their needs, how does my game differ from every other game in the genre, like what are they going to be familiar with, things like that. Like those are all factors that influence your tutorial design, but to be able to like follow through and like make an outline while we're talking about tutorials and why you should be thinking of it in this way, I think that just makes it a lot more interesting and relevant to the developer in the moment. So.
Yeah. So you mentioned what was I going to say? Oh yeah, yeah. So you mentioned about like trying to educate, so trying to help people. So Roblox has that other program, well, Roblox Education. So is there any plans of maybe in the future like having level up and or maybe some type of like integration with education?
Can I tell them?
Yeah, go for it.
Spill the beans.
Our next roundtable is actually going to be an educational games roundtable in collaboration with the education team. So
yeah, we work pretty closely with the education team, and we're constantly riffing off of one another. I think the main difference between the two groups is education obviously is much more focused on like school, like providing resources to grade schools, high schools, colleges, sort of learning materials, right? They have a book that they publish semi-yearly on programming on Roblox and things like that. Whereas we're a lot more focused on the developer community specifically. But just given that we're both sharing general knowledge on game design, there's a lot of sort of collaboration between the two to see how we can sort of recycle each other's work and sort of share it in whatever format is appropriate for our initiatives that we're doing. So.
And to do it efficiently, that we're not doubling up on work and even perhaps presenting two different versions of something. We want to be on the same page. So yeah, we definitely work pretty closely together.
Yeah, they were the first team to hire a game designer that wasn't on my team.
But then you weren't the first game designer on Roblox.
That's right. I'm the proto game designer. Yes, everyone. I designed Roblox. No. Yeah. First one with the game designer title. I know because I searched for the first week for other game designers and they were not there.
So does that mean I was number 2?
You were number 2 actually. Kale was number 3. And then Tom is our other game designer over on education. But yeah.
So you've mentioned that you so throughout the events, is there something you've like learned or like maybe you, like throughout your experience outside Roblox, which like, oh yeah, this has to be like this and like that. So is there something that maybe throughout the panels and events is like, oh, so you find like really interesting, or maybe has changed the way you think about some topics?
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about. I think it's not just level up. It's just been through my career at Roblox. You kind of learn a lot, and this is something. Aaron and I are both fortunate because actually our careers started with Facebook games. We both of us were at Zynga when they were really popular with like Farmville, Castleville, all those sort of games. And we were there at the critical time when mobile was really starting to blow up in the early 2010s. And we saw the company try and apply what they thought were best practices on Facebook directly to mobile and horribly, horribly fail because they fail to realize that different platforms have these little nuances that make them different from one another. And so that was something that I and Aaron, both of us, when we joined, was something that we were very, very cognizant of is like Roblox is a different platform. There's going to be things that are similar to mobile and there's going to be things that are different. But I would say just in our time at Roblox, maybe one of the biggest things is like when you're developing on mobile, one of the things that you spend a lot of cycles on is that first time user experience, that first 5 minutes. It's highly, highly polished. They know down to the millisecond exactly what players are doing from moment to moment in the game. They're heavily analyzing it. They're optimizing it. They're throwing out the tutorial. They're making a new tutorial. And on Roblox, there are no tutorials at all. And initially when I got here, I was like, oh, maybe it's just because people haven't thought to do it. And what you would see is when people were first trying to put in these more heavily focused tutorials on Roblox, it doesn't work because Roblox is a very, very social platform. And very often what you're going to find is it's roving groups of friends that are going from game to game. And if they can't play those experiences together right away, they're going to be frustrated and they're going to quit. So it's just like little things like that you learn. But also in level up events, I mean, anytime I interact with a developer, I'm learning something new. So one example from the events is just utilizing social media platforms and how you do that, right? I forget which level up it was specifically, but that was something that afterwards, we gather out together like, oh, that's a good insight. We should, share that with the community whenever we work with them in the future.
Mhm.
But yeah, Aaron, tossing over to you.
Yeah, I was just thinking of another example. So like on mobile, players actually download your game onto their phones and they have this little icon that's in their face every day whenever time they open up their phone. And it's a best practice to change that icon anytime you make an update because you're likely to, kind of stop noticing the icon after a while, but when it changes, you notice that it changes and it will re-engage players who maybe aren't playing quite as regularly. But yeah, we discovered on Roblox that it's not as simple as any change is good, right? You change that icon and you're going to re-engage your players. Like not necessarily. You can actually, have negative impacts on your metrics because, if you put something on that icon that maybe is confusing, that doesn't, simultaneously communicate the update, but also remain true to what players expect the content of the game to be, yeah, you can actually drive down your concurrence and your retention. So that was eye opening for me as well. Like we are constantly learning, like Dan said, like this is a different ecosystem, and it's really been fascinating to learn those things.
Something I think that is quite unique about Roblox is how multi-platform it is, because a lot of games is like, okay, so you make a game for mobile and it's gonna be for mobile. It has its stuff. You make maybe the closest thing is like Microsoft, which has games for Xbox and Windows. But I think it's really unique Roblox in the way how it's like you have it in almost all platforms like consoles, VR, computers, phones, tablets. I think it's quite interesting trying to understand like what's your audience, what's like the devices your audience play. For example, I do a lot of theme park related things. The main audience is mobile, which I guess is for Roblox, but it's a very big percentage of mobile. So I think it's really interesting trying to understand your audience because at the end, it's what I tell a lot of people: you can have a great game, you can work tons on your game, but if people don't play it or can't play it, it's just a bad game. So let's talk about a bit about the editing of the videos. So you said you've learned a bit about. At first you maybe started just editing some mistakes out. So how has the like editing like progress from like a year ago to now? And what are the things that you look forward to like keep or maybe just remove?
Yeah, no, we try to preserve as much of the content as possible. So usually it is like, oh, we paused too long while like Dan asked this question and I'm supposed to be pulling up an image and it just takes me a minute to get it up. It will take out that long pause, things like that. But previously we were just doing that and that was it. And now with the addition of clips that we're going to be releasing soon, we're also taking a look at like, yes, this whole thing in its entirety is useful, but how do we make the parts more useful as well? So like, are there particular questions that were really intriguing and really insightful that we can share to get a particular point across, right? Or to make that piece of information easier to search and consume, right? So yeah, we've started going back to our old videos, but also mostly starting with our newer ones, identifying those little interactions and clips and things that we can pull out to share those.
Yeah, there's not a lot of there's not really any editing of the content itself. We give panelists the right to sort of request if there's something that they were uncomfortable with answering or something that we remove it. We've only ever had one team pull out one question and it was related to like business practices. But the majority of time when we're making edits, it's because, I messed up my intro or there was construction in the background. So we needed to sort of like record it. For Kale, when he was doing his intro, we kind of jokingly internally call him Dr. Doolittle. He's got like 2 of every animal in his house, but his birds were very loud during the intro. So Aaron had him sort of like re-record it. But outside of that, it's not like we're editing panelists for them to say what we want them to say. It's mostly just making sure that it's a much more easily enjoyable video on YouTube, and we're removing awkward pauses and internet connections dying and things like that.
So you mentioned about like the feedback you get from the audience, so from from the developers and people who are like in the event. So but about like the community, so the people who watch the videos, what are like the main feedback you've gotten from them? Have you like, is there some like something that is very like prevalent?
Too long was the constant refrain early on. So we're addressing that one. We did get some kind of surprising feedback. It surprised us, in that there was some backlash about what was perceived to be as spotlighting developers who are already successful and therefore did not need additional exposure. And it's not fair that Roblox is doing that when they could be, supporting up and coming developers instead, right? And so that one kind of took us by surprise. And like recognizing that yes, there's a valid point there to be seen, that certainly would love to showcase our less successful, like up and coming developers as well. But I think Level Up is not the place for that, at least not yet. That we are, our entire stated purpose is to, teach these best practices. And the best way to do that is to talk to developers who are successful because they are implementing those best practices already. So I think there was a little misunderstanding about why we were selecting the developers that we were. And that was really a messaging problem on our end. And once we started more emphasizing like the reason why we were talking to these developers, then we stopped getting that feedback.
Yeah, it was kind of like a crash course in the internet for us. So like we when we were thinking about it with roundtables, part of it was like as a thank you to these devs, we want to make sure that we're spotlighting and celebrating them. And so we called like the topic on the dev forum developer spotlight, like Minitune. And so everyone thought everyone misconstrued the intent of Level Up. They thought it was to sort of spotlight this developer exclusively and celebrate them, when really it was like, no, we're trying to, like, they're sharing their knowledge with the community. We want to have them share their knowledge. So we had to just mess around with the words a little bit to make it much more explicit that this is, you know, a resource for the community, not a sort of vanity project for already well-known developers.
Right.
But yeah, that was definitely a learning experience.
Yeah, you want to learn from experts, right? And so it makes sense to go to developers who are successful.
But actually, the Minitoon is the only person who has, like, well, other than the team, who's actually been twice on Level Up, I think.
Yes.
That's correct.
Any plans
Yeah,
on bringing someone back?
I would love to have Craft back again. I thought that was like a lot of fun. All of the panelists I think have been like really delightful. I don't know, Aaron, is there a hot pick for you, a number one that you want to see back on Level Up?
You know, our very first panelists were Red Manta, and I think that there are some other topics. They talked about live ops before, but maybe something like progression or even monetization would be really valuable to have back as well. So, you know, we want to keep having new faces on, new perspectives and things like that. But then, yeah, I would be happy to have any of our panelists back. They've all been fabulous.
Yeah, I mean, just given the way that we do our Level Up events, like I said, we kind of keep it higher level, but I would love to go more in depth with some developers on, like, for example, like Arithia with like level design or something like that. But the community is so big and there's so many topics to cover. So, you know, it's unlikely we'll be recycling a lot of the developers over and over. We'll probably be going from topic to topic and expert to expert over time.
I think, you know, one of the reasons we had Minitoon back, in addition to him just being a fabulous resource and very willing to help us out, was that we wanted on that particular panel, the level design panel, to represent games of very different genres, right? So we had an open world game, we had a shooter, we had more of a narrative focused game, and so yeah, it was really useful to talk to Minitoon in that context as well, and to have those different perspectives present.
So you've talked about a bit of like the legal limits you had at the start. So what are like the main legal issues? If, well, not any issues, but like, because I assume like there's some things, for example, you guys have experience with but can't say because of probably some NDA signed. Or so what are the main issues in this topic about when trying to talk about certain aspects?
Sure. So yeah, I think the two big ones are NDA. Like we can't give examples necessarily from our experience because we are under NDA about those things. Even though, boy, do we have some great examples of what not to do in particular. But the other one is fair use, which is the intellectual property kind of framework for education, and it is even according to lawyers I've spoken to, it is murky. It is a little bit untested, and so you can say like, oh, this is an educational context, so therefore I can show this image or I can show this video, and a lot of it comes down to the context, the amount that you are using it, how much of your content is made up of those examples as opposed to original content. Like there are just a lot of things to keep in mind, and even the lawyers were stressing like just try to be reasonable because it's unproven, like I said, and we might get some complaints. We might have to have something taken down and edited again, and we just have to be prepared for that. But yeah, so far I think we've treaded pretty carefully. We do get permission from developers to use images from their games and stuff like that. So we try to stay on the right side of it.
Yeah, not much to add.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say not much to add. If you've ever seen our decks that we put together internally for like Accelerator, it's like filled with like SpongeBob memes and stuff, and unfortunately we're not able to do that for Level Up. So
yeah, losing the memes was a real blow.
Yeah, it was heartbreaking.
Yeah, that was one of our tools to keep the presentations interesting, and we lost it.
So Dan, specifically, so you said you've learned a lot, like presenting these events. So what are like, let's say someone, for example, to some of like the event organizers. So what are like the some tips you would give them from like, okay, so how to like hosting an event and like trying to keep things on topic and trying to keep it interesting and fresh.
Yeah, I when starting out, for some reason, I was locked in a mindset of like, okay, I have to be an entertainer and I have to sort of mechanically do this stuff. And over time, I've kind of just learned like it's kind of like everything else in life, right? Like dating and everything else. Just be yourself, kind of treat it as the same conversation you would have if you saw that person at RDC, right? And just demonstrate a general interest in it. And I think the more you sort of just naturally have the conversation flow and less try to perform on screen, just the more genuine and the better it's going to be. I think the other thing, and I kind of use the analogy of like, growing up on a summer day, you would dip your foot in the water to see how cold it was. And then like, you really, really didn't want to go into water, but like once you jumped into water, it's kind of fine. And that's a lot of the times how I kind of operate in these events. I kind of get nervous beforehand, but like once you're in it, you kind of accept it and you're kind of like going with the flow. And so like more and more these days, I try and sort of channel that energy when I'm on the screen and just like, well, I've already done this a million times before, like, so let's go and do it. So I think it's really just more of a practice thing. Like this is, if running events is something you're passionate about, but you're nervous to do it or you're unsure if it's going to be successful, with everything else in life, you just got to try it. You just got to fail at it. And over time, you're going to learn and you're going to get better at it. But nobody's ever going to be perfect on the first time. Right. So you just got to go for it. If it's something you're passionate about, just do it.
Okay, so we're reaching the end of the panel, so I think we should start like closing things up. So, well, we've talked about like level up, and so let's talk about what are like the future for level up. So, how do you see level up in a year from now?
Ooh. Oh boy. So we mentioned that we have experiments that we want to run. So I think we'll have more event types and more ways of consuming the content. I'm trying not to get too specific. But yeah, we're constantly evolving. We do have ideas for maybe different types of live events and things like that we can do. And yeah, just seeing what works. It's hard to predict that now, but especially as our Guilded community hopefully grows, we can start involving that community in those decisions as well. And have a better way of predicting how things are going to be received, have some polls going and stuff like that to really let them help shape the direction.
Yeah, I think just doubling down on that, Guilded is kind of our shot on goal and sort of growing the community organically. And over time, we would love to sort of shift more and more ownership or direction over to the community in terms of like, what is it that they want to see? Or maybe even like if somebody in the community is passionate and they want to host their own sort of like level up, right? We would sort of start them out and have them start to do that to where it's more and more like just a community sort of driven initiative to sort of knowledge share with one another. And we're sort of guiding them along. That's a long-term 3 to 5 year vision for level up. But right now it's really just trying to find that interest in the community, find the formats that work the most, and then just double down on them and constantly iterate and make it better and better over time. So really this has been a learning process for us. We started out, our first level up ever was like a roundtable plus a 4-hour workshop. And now we're doing things like 10-minute videos as well as like group roundtables and stuff. So I think no matter what, if you were to time travel a year or 2 years in the future, I think for the better, level up is going to be a very different beast from even what it is right now. So.
For sure, Dan, that after that first event, it was on a Saturday, it was like all day long, and afterwards he was like, never again.
Yeah,
he was fried.
Yeah. We tried that, we hated it. Yep.
So any funny moments or yeah, so any funny moments you've from like this year of events you can
I guess most recently Missimo's excitement over being followed by Creekcraft was
That's true.
quite amusing. She was very proud of herself.
She was like chasing him down for like over a month, like add me. Missimo's a little aggressive sometimes. But yeah, that was funny. And finally she sends us a link to like an image of Creekcraft following her. So that was a pretty funny moment. Minitoon's always entertaining. He was like showing off his plushie, and then when we uploaded his video, I guess it was like a meme in his community that he was bald. So then I like responded to his tweet as well, like, oh crap, we didn't edit out his bald head on this, and the community sort of like celebrated the acknowledgement that Minitoon is bald. So
Recently
fun as
also
well.
had a bold topic discussion.
A bald, yeah, that's right. Yeah, so we have those really great moments on and off camera with the developers where we're sort of like celebrating. Even outside of Level Up and Accelerator, the meme for a while was I was a boomer because, you know, I guess at like 30 years old, you know, now I'm completely out of touch. It's only getting worse by the year, but you'll still see some of those accelerators like pop into Level Up or something like, oh, it's Boomer Dan, you know, so.
I will also say Minitoon playing his accordion during an after party was a special moment as well. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. We have some good like inside jokes on Level Up too, like the watermelon pizza. I know Jessa's in here, but Jessa likes to drop that one in all the time. Or me sharing a video to Slamilton for people to watch before the Level Up begins. So
I guess. So anything else you want to say before we finish the panel and move on to the Q&A?
Please, if you have not already, like and subscribe to the Developer Relations YouTube channel and join us on Guilded to continue the conversation about Level Up there.
Yeah,
I hate being that person. I'm sorry.
Yeah, smash that like button. And I know we sound like a broken record. This is not something that we're obligated to say. It's something that we passionately like to say. But please give us any feedback. Please fill out surveys. We read every single piece of feedback that's there. It's something that we could bring internally and be like, see, look, everyone likes Level Up, or see, everyone hates Level Up. Let's change it. But for us, it's how we iterate and we make it better, because ultimately this is not something that's for us. It's for you, the community. So what are the best ways that we can share that knowledge from the community and from ourselves with you? That's what we want to hear. So.
So thank you so much. Okay, so now we'll move to the Q&A. I'll open the Q&A. It should be open now, so you can write your question. You go to chat and then Q&A, and we'll try to answer them.
Looks like Sir Nils might have one.
Sure. So in the video, you won't see the question. So Sir Nils has asked then, so basically, how did you get your job at Roblox, and why specifically Roblox?
Oh, that's a fun one. So I don't know how much you guys know about like elsewhere in the industry outside of Australia, which is Roblox, but there's a pretty high turnover rate at different companies, and it's not by virtue of anything the developers do. It's just kind of how the business works. If your game isn't successful, sometimes an entire studio will shut down, or even for some games, they really scale up before they go live, and then they need to sort of shrink down just to sort of manage it. And so just naturally, some of those jobs dry up. For me, at my last role, I'd like to joke that our entire studio got broken up via text. So I came in and there was a few engineers and my designer buddy standing around like, what's going on? Or like, go check your email. And in the email, it's like, hey, sorry. So we're shutting down the entire studio. So that was a bummer. And so, but I'm kind of used to it at this point, 10 years in the industry, that stuff kind of happens. So I was like, all right, time to open up LinkedIn, time to update it. And I actually got reached out to by a recruiter. So this is something that's kind of funny for our generation. This is more of a boomerism thing, but Aaron and I are kind of in this slice of generations that nobody knows what Roblox is. You have, a younger generation that grew up on Roblox and is developing on Roblox. and you have an older generation who raised kids who are on Roblox or even have kids right now who are playing Roblox, and they're all like, oh my God, we know Roblox. But for us, we don't really know about Roblox. So they reached out, like, hey, do you want to join Roblox? I went to check it out. And again, to show my age, growing up, I loved playing Flash games. So websites like Newgrounds and addictinggames.com and all of that. And I just got that strong vibe from Roblox. And I was like, okay, I'm interested. So I went to go and check out the job. It was something that was very, very different from what I've done before, right? Where before I was working on specific games. But it was something that was an interesting opportunity. And I sort of talked about it earlier here. But one of my frustrations within the industry and maybe even in education is I don't feel like they do necessarily a great job of teaching game design to people who want to get into game design. And so I saw this as an opportunity to sort of right that wrong and sort of teach the community. And so it was something that I found to be an interesting opportunity, and I went after it. So I don't know. Do we want to talk about my first couple of days as game designer one at Roblox, or did that answer the question? Yeah, it was just how I got the job.
So Noble Draconian asks, so what software do you use to split the screens up with the multiple cam feeds? Is it just Zoom with a fancy Roblox front end?
Let's see. What software do you use to split your screen into multiple cam feeds and whatnot? So it's just Zoom. We just use Zoom for our level up events. We'll record that video. It gets captured on the cloud, and then we'll edit it in frame.io. We'll do like timestamps for it and make edits. Yeah.
Okay, so I have questions for you. So so what is it like being in like the game insights team at Roblox? So you mentioned you work with accelerators, you also work with some games. So what is it like? How different is it being in the game insights than being and working on a mobile game or something outside Roblox?
There is no more wholesome and rewarding job in the industry than being on this team. Like, completely, sincerely. You when you're in the industry, game development's a team sport. You can, form really strong bonds with members on your team. You can have really fulfilling moments where, a feature that you worked on was successful, or you hear back from players that they really appreciated it. But yeah, being at Roblox on the Game Insights team, we work closely with developers, and we get to, see them growing as devs and learning and becoming successful or growing on success that they already have. And that's very rewarding and fulfilling. And everyone is so sweet and so appreciative. I've received care packages from teams that I've worked with just out of the blue, just totally surprising me. Just super, super wholesome. Yes, you got one too.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Simple Dev sent me a mask during the pandemic. Yeah.
Nice. Yep.
No.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead and finish, and then I'll hop in.
Oh, yeah, just and I will say that this is what I needed to be excited about game development again, and also to fall back on my background in education and things like that, to do this mentorship, which was always part of kind of what I wanted to be doing all along. Yeah, it's been really great.
Yeah, it's definitely been a super rewarding experience, and at least for me, I see a bit of myself in a lot of the developers that I work with, just really passionate people who are pursuing a dream of creating really fun games. And so it's always a joy to sort of help them out on that path. I remember one of the earliest conversations I had was actually with the original devs of Adopt Me, Bethink and oh my goodness, I forgot his name. But this was before they even had the pet feature, and they were sitting down with me and they were like, Dan, we're really at this point where we're about to graduate college, and we're trying to figure out if we can pursue a career on Roblox or if we need to look to other platforms. And through working with them, we ultimately landed on the pet feature, and they kind of just took it and ran with it. And that moment where they blew up and I saw that they had sort of like made it as like successful developers is definitely one of the most rewarding memories that I've had. And we have those moments all the time here, right? Like Bad Business, the Rue Dev developers actually went through Accelerator. We met every single week, seeing their game take off and them going from like poor college kids to like very successful. Those are just great moments that you don't get working on a game. When you're working on a game, you're working in Excel every day for like 2-3 years until your game ships. And here, it's kind of like a new adventure every week, which is just really, really fun and rewarding.
So Railworks asks, is there any topic that a dev wants to cover up on Level Up? Like, what do you have any suggestions for making that happen?
Yeah, we're going to be having those conversations on Gilded, so please do. You can chime in now in the general chat if you want to, but we will also be running some polls and things.
And Railworks also asks, so for current Roblox devs trying to break into Corp, do you have any tips?
For joining Roblox specifically, or
Yeah.
any sort of company?
Yeah, I think he means getting a job at Roblox.
I think really it doesn't matter whether it's Roblox or any other company that you're applying to. I think the main things that you want to do is you really want to sort of demonstrate a passion for the role that you're trying to apply to, and you really want to demonstrate experience for that role that you have. And I think Roblox developers kind of have a unique advantage there where, for me, when I was back in college and I was trying to get my first job in the industry, we didn't have like a really nice studio that we could work in, such as like the Roblox studio. And I think for Roblox developers, one thing I really want them to sort of realize is having that portfolio of games that you've already built already puts you much more at an advantage than anybody else who's studying a 4-year career in college and writing 10-page papers, because writing 10-page papers is not really what you do in the game industry, right? You're building a game. So as long as you have that passion and as long as you're able to demonstrate it and you're able to demonstrate that experience, you should be sort of good to go, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. I've had developers talk to me about trying to get into AAA too, and they really are anxious that like, oh, I don't have a degree. How am I going to get in? I'm like, no, hold on. You have way more experience than I did. You've actually been doing the job, so that's a huge advantage. And like, do not feel at all self-conscious about the experience that you have because it's invaluable. So.
Yeah, I think it's actually like something curious, especially with like the technology like sector, especially with video games. There's no need like I'm right now I'm at university, but it's like there's no need to be at university, as in a way as it's not what will define if you get the job or not. I think it's more like the experience you have and also the passion you have, because you can have a lot of experience, but if you're someone who is like, oh yeah, I'm just here to make money, it's like maybe it's probably better to hire someone else, because game design, this is something I've learned like throughout the years, is basically working as a team. It's something you can do alone, but it's usually something that you will do as a team. So I think teamwork is something that is really important. So learning to work as a team.
For sure. And I will say that probably the biggest thing that I got out of my college career, and I have 3 degrees, way more than I need for game development. The biggest thing that I got out of it was networking, and it was working with those teams, kind of forging those lifelong friendships, and like most importantly, like proving myself to be reliable and creative and someone who was good to have on your team. And then that's how I got my first job. One of my former teammates in school, who was still a classmate of mine, got hired at Zynga, and they had some openings, and so he referred me because he'd worked with me before, and we got along well, and he also trusted me. So I do strongly believe in education in all of its forms, and you do not necessarily have to have a piece of paper saying that you learned this thing. Get your knowledge wherever you can find it. That's part of why Level Up exists. But more importantly, like demonstrate it. and like you said, work with teams, because there are a lot of really valuable things you can get out of that. Learning how to work with people, learning how to give feedback, learning how to take feedback, but also that networking aspect, super important.
Yeah, I was muted. Just a reminder that you can post a question in the Q&A section. So we'll probably be here until past.
Real quick, I want to say shout out to New Fizzy, whose name I forgot earlier when I was talking about the two developers in the comedy. New Fizzy and B.
Don't worry, Dan. I'll fix that in post.
Yeah, you gotta fix it in post. Don't embarrass me like that.
Just for a robotic voice.
That's right.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I've just seen. I suppose the question in general. So they say, I'm interested in doing an internship at Roblox once I'm old enough, but more one in the legal department. I am from Germany, so it's kind of difficult with the visas. Would you recommend doing the work to get the position?
Well, I don't. Maybe I'll put Aaron on the spot here. For me, I'm not as familiar with the legal industry. Each industry is kind of different. My wife works in science, and it's very, very important what degree you have in that for what position that you get. Whereas in the game industry, really you just show up with a game and you're already ahead of anybody with a 4-year degree. So it really depends on the industry that you're in, and I can't really speak to the legal one. In terms of applying to Roblox, I would say try. I mean, I would apply, but also don't be afraid to start your career out at somewhere smaller and work over, right? Like Zynga wasn't necessarily my dream job out of college, but it was a great opportunity. And I think for you, and this is something that I saw with a lot of people in school, don't just try and wait for the absolute one that you want, right? Be willing to sort of go to places and get experience first. And as you start to build that experience, your opportunities grow from there, right? Where when I first started in the industry, I had very limited options. And now 10 years later, there's a lot more options that are available to me. That's a very natural thing in any industry. And I think that's something that we all need to keep in mind.
Yeah, in terms of the legal department, I really have only spoken to them about like intellectual property and fair use concerns. I know that, if you want to be a lawyer, there's a lot of extra education that goes into that, and certification and testing, and it's all very tied to where you're working as well. So that can be very complicated. But yeah, I really can't get any more specific than that, I guess. I'm afraid I don't have a lot of information about that. But just to reiterate, I can see this word, reiterate what Dan said. For sure, absolutely always apply. I see, especially among female developers, a concern of like, I'm not qualified for this position. And you have to be willing to throw yourself out there. Even if you're not necessarily qualified for that particular position, like you don't have exactly 8 years of experience in game development or something, you haven't shipped 4 titles, you've shipped 2. Be willing to put yourself out there, and it's entirely possible that they'll say, hey, yeah, maybe not this role, but we might have this other role that's good for you. So I wouldn't stress too much about that. Like, shoot your shot, and be willing to ask questions. So if you do get rejected, say, hey, could you tell me why? Could you maybe point me in direction of, ways that I could address those gaps that would maybe make me more likely to get in the next time. And sometimes they won't respond to you. Recruiters are busy, but sometimes, like, I've gotten some very thorough responses back from doing that, and it can really help you learn and put you on the right track. And it also, shows to them that you are serious, you are interested, and you're willing to learn. So that can really leave them with a good impression of you as well. So if you do revisit later, that can help your case as well.
Yeah, I think one of the main issues, and it's something I have a lot, is that undervaluing yourself. Like in so many times, I'm like, oh yeah, I can't apply to this. I don't. But then if you think about it, it's like, yeah, I've done this before, or yeah, maybe I am qualified. Maybe I should. And so I think that's that's one of like that's one of the things I think you don't learn from university. You learn with experience that it's like, probably more than you think you know.
Yeah, everyone's got imposter syndrome. I still do. I'm like, maybe I'm not that good of a systems designer. I don't know. Who's to say?
Yeah.
But you're never gonna get anything that you want if you don't even try. So
I have a question. They ask. So, what is the difference between being an incubator and accelerator in Roblox? Kind of curious about that.
okay, I can attempt to answer this. So originally, the difference between the two groups were accelerator are development teams that are coming in and starting a brand new game from scratch, whereas incubators are coming in with an established game and they're trying to work on one or two really cool features. That evolved over time in the history of the accelerator program. So at some point, that eventually got smashed together into just accelerator for about a year or two. And then after about a year or two, they pulled it apart again, and accelerator became still creating a game from scratch, whereas incubator became, when Roblox went public, there's a lot of interest from elsewhere in the industry on developing on Roblox. And so incubator became more bringing in one or two or three teams from outside of Roblox and really having them sort of try and learn the Roblox platform. And so this really cool thing occurred within that program where incubators and accelerators are in like chat groups together, and they're both sort of sharing knowledge. The accelerator sharing what is Roblox and what's so weird about it and different about it, and the incubators sharing, hey, this is my experience from elsewhere in the industry. Maybe try this out on Roblox, kind of a thing. So,
and now we've got Game Fund as well, which is a whole separate program that funds games. There's a acceptance criteria and things like that. There's a whole process for it, but they also get some support from Game Insights team. So.
Yeah.
There's one more question. I think we'll close out on that after. So, is there any competition in the accelerator program chat, or is it a private information?
Competition in what way? Like they're trying to compete against each other to be better, or I guess maybe I'll try and attempt to answer it that way, and then if that's not what you're asking, maybe clarify in the general chat. But I have never really found there to be competition among teams in Accelerator outside of maybe like playful competition. For the most part, it's an extremely collaborative effort. They're constantly will do play tests every week. All the teams will come to the play test. They'll provide constructive feedback to one another. If one of the accelerators is stuck with something, they have a bug, or they're not really sure how to implement something, the other accelerators are going to help them out. Really, if we saw competition, we would try to discourage it because it's really supposed to be a knowledge sharing sort of experience where developers are working with one another and they're trying to just become better at their craft. So
okay. So I think we'll be closing the event. So once again, thank you so much to Dan and Erin for accepting the offer. It's been very interesting event. For those who assisted, remember to fill in the survey form. It helps me a lot, as Dan and Erin says. Those forms help a lot to improve and see what people are interested in too. So once again, thank you so much. If you guys want to say something to close it.
Thank you so much for having us and giving us the opportunity to talk about the program and kind of give a peek behind the scenes. So it's been fun.
Yeah, thanks for having us. And as I'll be a broken record here, but anything that you want to see from Level Up, join our Guilded. We'd love to hear from you. And on the topics we talked about later, follow your dreams. Just go after it. Just take a shot. Don't be afraid to fail. I failed plenty of times, but you eventually get to where you want to go because you learn and you grow and you become better. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Okay, so the recording. 1 second. 1 second. We're back.
this is neat. I like all of the little little panel that pops up and the be right back. That's a little slicker than our Zoom setup.
Yeah, we don't have that one on there.
Yeah, all right.
Sorry, the dog had come up. Yeah. So, well, actually went quite well. I didn't forget to hit the record button.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh, there's my dog. Hi. Hi.
I do not have a dog, unfortunately.
Missing
Not
out.
in the dog club.
I have 2 now. I used to have 3.
His
Oh,
face.
jeez.
I used to have 2 golden and a German Shepherd.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So
Puppy
yeah,
dog.
I'm actually curious. So, will the accelerator still remain online? Because I think it was something that bugged me a lot from accelerator. It's like, oh, I would love to do that, but yeah, I need to go to the United States to do it, which used to be something which was very limiting for me.
Yeah, right now because of COVID, it's entirely remote. So they run it. Well, they did run it in Discord. Now they're going to run it in Guilded. We are just starting to go back to the office in May, so it might start to be on site again. But I believe even if we start to do it on site again, it's going to be a hybrid environment. So, and they were even doing this right before the pandemic too, where you have some teams that are in person and others that are remote because they are from like Europe or New Zealand. One of the teams was, or something like that. So, yeah, it will continue to be hybrid.
Yeah, so you have another question in the chat. Do we want to answer it?
Yeah, sure. Behind the blocks.
I don't know what
I'm
that
not
is.
sure what that event is.
I've
don't
heard
know.
the name, but I can't like recall what it is. Let's see.
might have been
Okay.
Jake
So
Party.
that's the office, like that's the office store thing.
Oh. I assume at some point after the office opens up again that will start
I
up.
think it's probably a good idea to ask Ryan about that. He may know.
I don't think anybody's gonna have the answer to that yet because we're kind of like winging it as we go in terms of how to open up from the pandemic. So I would conservatively say probably not this year. If it had, I think first they want to try and figure out how to get employees back, and then they'll figure out office tours after that. So
It's gonna be a little hectic for a while.
yeah.
Have you noticed like a big change for good for like in the teams you've worked with, like throughout the pandemic? Have you noticed like some big, let's see, other than being online and changing stuff, but some like
All you, Dan. I was hired during the pandemic.
Yeah. So are you talking specifically about Accelerator or in general?
no, in general, like if because for example the pandemic, it's been a very bad situation, but for a lot of sectors, it's like made them update, so stay go.
Yeah. So that's a good question. So, I would actually say, ironically, it was good for developers because, as you saw, there was a massive amount of growth on the platform, and so actually, a common reaction I saw from developers is like even the ones that were kind of like less inclined to update their game, they got on it a lot more because like, oh shoot, like I have a lot of people coming in, I better do some updates. So I actually think it was good in the sense that a lot of the community started to develop more full time or more seriously, and we're working on a lot of different things. There's also just like in general in my time at Roblox been a lot more of a like maturity over time of the community in terms of the kind of content they're creating and the complexity of it and things like that. So that's definitely really exciting to see as
Yeah,
well.
I think actually like the pandemic helped Roblox like grow a lot because I remember, I don't know, maybe Redworks, you remember it too, like 6 years ago. Like the top game was um I forget the name. The one for, yeah, work at the pizza place, and it was like, oh wow, that game has 10,000 players, and that's like, oh wow, that's so much players. And now you see like
Yeah.
some of the like top games in updates when there's no spiders in the servers. Um, there's there's like 1 million players.
Yeah,
which
yeah, definitely. And
I
you
think
definitely start
we're
to see a lot of,
normalizing it. We're normalizing it, but it's still 1 million players.
yeah, yeah. You're also starting to see a lot of those bigger games sort of develop in a professional capacity or starting their own studios and things like that. Whereas when I joined, it was a lot more common to see 1 or 2 person teams kind of like winging it at the top. So you're definitely seeing like Roblox grow up every day in really wonderful and interesting ways. So
So there's so many teams now. For example, the Game Insights. That's something that I don't know how old it's it, but I guess it's 4 or 5 years old.
Game Insights, we are technically 3. We're as old as I am. I got my 3-year block thing here.
Nice. It was a team of 1 for 1 year.
It was a team of 1 for 1 year, and then they gave me 1 head count, and then they gave me 2. I'm actually probably going to be hiring a few more pretty soon, but yeah, fingers crossed. But yeah, no, we kind of popped up around 2019. So let's see. Are you peeps? Are we planning to go to RC? We're actually probably going to give a talk, Aaron and I. So look forward to that.
I hope to be able to go. Things that it's I need to. I mean, I guess I'll be invited. I'm not sure. The last time I was invited was for like the after when we had the after party in Europe, which I was like, yeah, I'm probably not gonna go because it's like I have to like buy tickets or need to see something on a screen. And I was
Yeah.
gonna go with my friend who at the end didn't go. So yeah, my two got excited. Hopefully I can go in person. It all depends. It wasn't in September or October. I forget.
It was October last year, but that was because they actually had it planned for when it typically was, which was like July every other year. But then COVID happened, so they pushed it out to October.
Oh, they sent it. Let's see.
Railworks wants to work for you, Dan.
Railworks, I'm in. I'm listening. We would love to hire somebody from the community, in the design position at some point, just because we are the outsiders and having that insider knowledge would
September
definitely
9th, then.
Yeah.
Like game designers are usually the most forgotten. Like some of the most forgotten
Nobody
aspects.
knows what we do.
Well, I think I saw this a lot in college. Like, it's very easy to understand the value of a programmer and very easy to understand the value of an artist because they make physical things that you see. But then when you get more into the soft skills like design, production, product management, where it's a lot more driving ideas, right? People don't really know what we do, and B are like, well, I can come up with ideas too. What makes you special? Without understanding sort of like the day to day that the designers and the producers and whatnot need to do.
The thing is that you can't come up with ideas. It's so hard.
Well, anybody can come up with ideas. I think really where you cross the threshold into design is when you're starting to think less about what you think is cool and more about what your audience is going to do and how you can create like the best experience possible for them. Yeah, the big picture. That's exactly right.
I think something that would be cool about doing a level up about this is so looking at about like the different positions to make a game, because usually you have so you have the builder, you have the modeler, you have the scripter, you have the lead, which is like organized, but then you also have like other roles, and a bit like, especially with maybe now that there's like different studios on Roblox. Maybe you're smiling because you had that planned.
No, I'm smiling because you're throwing out Australian terms for the positions like scripter and builder. When Aaron and Kale came in any industry person I talked to, they're like, what is a scripter? What is a builder? Right? Because they're called something different elsewhere in the industry. So we have like a whole glossary internally of like Roblox specific terms that people outside might not be familiar of. But yeah, I think that would definitely be an interesting topic. Certainly when I was much younger, 17, 18 years old, I had no idea. Like I knew I wanted to be a game designer, but I had no idea what a game designer does. It just seemed cool to me. So
it's a very hard industry to get in a way. Like for example, in front of my university, there's like the the King offices, which I applied to and I got rejected because in one of the things I put other. Like
Yeah.
it was like, what's your most fluent language? And I put other, and it's like an automatic reject.
Aw,
But it's like,
That's a shame.
yeah.
Yeah, the game industry is hard to get into, but then easy to move around in. Once you get your first gig, and this is why I say just take whatever opportunity comes.
Mhm.
Once you get your first gig, because unfortunately the industry is so thrashy, and I think the typical lifespan of a job in the industry is like, what is it, Aaron? Like 1.5 to 2 years. People hop around all the time, so it's very, very common once you're in it to be able to go from.
that's the thing I've noticed about Roblox. It's not as much of that.
Mhm.
It's less.
Yeah, well, it's because it's a lot more community driven, right? So there's not when you're developing a game for even mobile, but definitely AAA, there's a lot of money that goes behind it. It's actually, to produce a AAA game is like, what is it, Aaron? It's like 10x the budget of a blockbuster movie.
Yeah.
So it's just very, very
Like
expensive.
so
And
many years too.
if it doesn't go well, then the answer is to sort of drop it. Whereas like when you're developing on Roblox, yeah, you're putting in 3 to 6 to 9 months to a year of your time on a game. If it doesn't go well, you're like, okay, well, time to move on to the next one, right? You're not losing
You're
hundreds
also,
of millions of dollars in development or something like
your,
that.
yeah, your expectations are also different. So, like, Dan and I both worked at Warner Brothers, and if your game is not guaranteed to make some obscene amount of money, they will cut it very early. If they're not confident that it will hit that number, and it doesn't matter that it's like, okay, well, this game is making money, it's making good money, it's more than supporting the team. A smaller studio with expectations aren't quite as high would keep this game going. A large studio would possibly kill it because it's not making all of the money. So
Yeah.
yeah,
There's
that
a lot
can be
less
tough.
there's a lot less risk too because of that. Like when a VC's putting in a ton of money, they don't want to see your immersive sandbox exploration game. They want to see, okay, Candy Crush is the top game on mobile. Make Candy Crush, basically.
Or yeah, show me how like all of the mechanics in your game are proven already in some other successful game.
Yeah,
I'm actually curious for like your like experience on mobile, because something that is like something I don't like especially about like mobile games is that they're big predators. So it's like they're made to make money. It's very focused on that. And it's like sometimes, especially of making mobile games, you have to throw out your morality for a lot of stuff. So I assume doing stuff like that, it like burns you quite
it
fast.
it depends on the studio. Some studios are certainly like that, and it's up to you to try and avoid that when you're applying to different jobs. So that's why it's very important when you're applying to take a look at their portfolio and make sure they're not one of those guys. I would say in large part, a lot of people in mobile are genuinely trying to create a great experience. And in terms of the overall health and strategy for developing games, it's actually better and more sustainable to not try and gouge your players for money because you burn out players a lot faster, right? Like, I don't know what your opinion is of Candy Crush, but they're certainly not gouging players for money. It's a nice, delightful experience. So I would say overall, mobile is a net positive on the industry because it's allowed for experiences to exist that appeal to a wider audience than was there before. And I think that was one of the really important things that happened with both Facebook and mobile games is like, in large part, before that, the majority of the gaming audience was 18 to 24-year-old dudes like me, right? And with mobile, you actually see a majority of the audience, actually at least 50% of the audience is female, and it hits an audience as well. Like Facebook games, the average age was like 35 to 50-year-olds. And I was delighted to see that like that's an audience that before thought that games were stupid and shouldn't exist. And actually we had to deal with the whole like violent video game movement where they were trying to like ban video games and stuff. So to appeal to those audiences and to show them like, hey, games can be more than just Grand Theft Auto or this, that, or the other thing, I think is ultimately a good thing.
Agreed. And it was so funny seeing like my mother-in-law when I was working on Castleville. became this like hardcore, like playing hours and hours a day on Castleville. And she had mule accounts that she had set up to send items to herself. Like these were strategies. She was in groups on Facebook, like learning strategies for like min-maxing this silly medieval themed farming game. And like she doesn't consider herself a gamer, right? She had never played games before, still wouldn't consider herself a gamer, but like, no, you were really into, you were hardcore, like super player. So yeah, it definitely opened up games for whole new audiences. And even on Roblox, we see that the female audience on mobile is very strong.
Yeah, especially Roblox. I think, especially now. So, well, I don't know because you've joined recently, but Roblox had it used to have like this tag of, oh, you're doing games for Roblox. It's like, yeah, so it's Roblox had like this tag as if it was a bad thing, but I've seen it, and that's something like a lot of developers I think say. It's like they say, oh yeah, I make games. They now they specify, but like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, it's like you usually wouldn't say, except in like some situations. Oh yeah, I make games for Roblox.
I mean, that's first of all, like I understand. It's unfortunate and silly that there is some of that prejudice sometimes, but like Dan, I don't know if you've faced this, but I've gotten snarky comments about working for Zynga. You know, or working for mobile, those aren't real games, you know, and really you just got to keep doing what you're doing, keep making experiences that you enjoy and that, you know, you're making for your players and be successful at it. And who cares what other people think?
Ultimately, the people who are making those comments are like the insecure ones. And it's kind of a sad existence where they need to like knock people down to make themselves feel better. But like ultimately, numbers show that they're wrong. I mean, like it's mobile games are actually more profitable right now than AAA. So like, who are the real games,
for sure.
right? And like, you know, who are you to say what somebody else is allowed to enjoy? Like, I like watching comedies. I don't like watching horror and slasher films, but I'm not about to be like, well, those aren't real films because I don't enjoy them. You know, like different things for different people. And I think more variety is just ultimately better because then you get these wonderful sort of like cross pollinations where one audience that would have never talked to another before are suddenly enjoying the same experience together, maybe for different reasons, but they're enjoying and celebrating that experience with one another. I think that's only positive in my opinion.
I remember making my first game, which was, it was like, now I go and see it and it's like, this is so bad. It was a bus station. And I was like so proud. Like I did it on my computer, then I wanted to play it on my iPad, and it's like, this is so good. I'm so proud of it. And I think that's so, yeah, sorry, that's my dog. That's something that I've sadly, I think I've lost a bit. Not for, but it's in like the happiness of making games. I don't know how to say it. So it's yeah, I think that's something I've enjoyed a lot of Roblox, which is like I've learned so much. Like 5 years ago, I would always be like, oh yeah, this is like this, and now it's like, no, no, this is totally different. And that's something I've especially learned, especially since like I've been able to talk with more people or see them talk. Um, that is something
Yeah.
I think Roblox does a lot more than other games, which is like it's easier to get in contact with a lot of people. Um, like I've worked with developers of all kinds. Um, yeah, in my niche sector, which is like theme park stuff, which funnily a lot of big developers came from that sector, like Asimo, Wisely, uh, well, Submarine. It's actually curious. It's I don't know if you ever played Roblox Point.
Roblox what?
Roblox Point.
Roblox coins.
Point.
Point?
Yeah, it
No,
used
I
to be
haven't.
it's well, it used to be the top paid game on Roblox
Hmm.
before. It's basically a theme park recreation.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Before my time.
Like theme parks on Roblox. It's quite curious because you see like the audience is usually mobile audience, which it's very role play based. And it's
Yeah.
quite interesting. I think so. For example, one thing I've learned a lot is like understanding your audience. especially now I tell a lot of people, and it's something I always argue with people, is like optimize your games. And that's the thing that actually it would be a cool topic about doing a level of optimization, because there's so many things I see, which is like just changing, for example, the collisions. Something that isn't collidable should be a box. Something that isn't should be like that. It's like so many. I don't know. It's these small details I think make me think different now than I thought before, and I'm very happy about, like, because in a way it's also like, I don't know, like I want to try once I graduate. I want to try to get into Accelerator and try to follow my project.
Well, you can apply to Accelerator while still in school. I think they
Yeah, the
can
thing is
treat
that
it as
here in
like you
Spain,
can-
since we go a bit different from the US, it's like very.
Yeah.
Um,
Sir Nils, to answer your question, do I need a lot of math skills for this field of activity? Yes, 100%. Were you ever sitting in school in like grade school or high school for your math class and you're like, why do I ever need to learn this? Well, all of that math is what I have to do. So, like possibility and combinatorics and sometimes calculus and algebra, lots of algebra. There's a lot of math in my role, which I thought I would never have to do again, but it's like everyday part of my job.
Yeah, game developer is so based on math.
Yeah,
If
but
you
the
program
nice thing
or
is I don't really need to retain it. Like I don't have to remember all of the rules. It's like when it comes up, I can just look it up again and be like, oh yes, that's how you calculate that thing. Okay, yes, let's go ahead and do this. But yeah, definitely if you want to be a systems and economy designer, math is probably one of the most important things you'll need.
as I said, on larger teams especially, you'll end up potentially with multiple designers who focus on different things. So I always had Dan, actually literally Dan, or someone like Dan, who is focusing on those more math centric tasks, and I was free to work on content, like narrative and world building, and figuring out what events we're going to go on our roadmap, and writing and all of those aspects also. So yeah, thankfully, because I neither enjoy nor am very proficient at math.
Yeah.
I had Dan.
Game designer title is actually extremely misleading because it's really like 4 or 5 uniquely very, very different, don't even touch each other roles. Where like systems and economy is much more doing Excel and math all day. For Aaron, it's a lot of like copywriting and sort of content creation and creativity.
Yeah.
Level designers are basically artists or part artists, and they're sitting in there and they're like building worlds all day.
I remember seeing Rethius like design. I'm like, wow. It's like, for me, something that I think is the hardest thing is filling up a space.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the things I struggle most with. Like I can do like 10 minutes of things. Okay, so and then it's okay. So how can I fill it?
Yeah, I've actually never designed a level in my entire life. I don't know where to even begin with it. It's not what I do. It's basically the equivalent of me taking a look at what like the programmer does. Like I know what they do. Sometimes I do a little bit of light scripting, but I am not a programmer. In the same way, my job is about as different from level design as it is from programming on a day-to-day basis. I actually probably have more in common with programmers than I do level designers. So just because you don't like math doesn't necessarily mean you're out in terms of game design. There's a lot of other sort of paths that you could sort of pursue for that.
I will say that it is interesting the ways that designers on a team work together and work with other disciplines. So like in my case, people that I worked with most closely with the art team, because I was basically handing them assignments and then discussing them with them. And of course, they always came back with like, but what if we did it this way? And I was like, that's even better. Let's do it that way, and then reviewing the work afterwards and saying like, okay, that's not quite what we need in order to fulfill the needs of the design or communicate this or that to the player. Let's nudge it this way a little bit and iterate. But I guess in terms of like systems design, the most I interacted with systems designers, it was more like I'd come up with this quest line and then I hand it off to be balanced. So like the rewards and the difficulty and all that would be handled by someone else.
Yeah, and that's a good point that you bring up. It's a common misconception that at least people were worried about in college when I told them I was a game designer. Is a lot of people think a game designer is like sitting there on their throne arbitrating every single detail of the game and telling people what to do. And I can confidently tell you that the reality is maybe 5% of everything that I come up with actually makes it into the game. It's an extremely collaborative effort. Oftentimes we'll pull the entire team into the room and say, okay, we have this feature. What are some ideas? We'll sort of aggregate that and go with the best direction from what everybody's thinking about, from programmer to artist to designer. But really, our job is less telling people what the game is going to be and more in pursuit of what is the best experience that we can create, regardless of where it comes from. So there's a lot of collaboration on that. And just because you go into programming doesn't mean you're going to have zero say on the game. That's just not how it works.
And
Yes, I think especially on Roblox, because it's like, yeah, you can program, but as I said, like I'm mainly a scripter. I program stuff, but I've done so many things. I've rigged, I've animated, I've done UI, I've done, and you learn a lot. Like I've learned. I mean, I'm not an expert UI designer. I'm, but it's like I think that's one of the good thing of Roblox. Is like maybe in like in other scenes, you have very like focused role because it's the most efficient thing. But here it's like you need to learn a bit of everything, which makes you see the, so it opens up your vision in a way, because maybe before it was like, oh, so it's this, but then you also understand why maybe the art team asks you to do that, or why maybe the animation team is doing it this like that.
Yeah.
For sure, that is something that I've worked on small indie teams, and I've worked on large corporate teams, and definitely like large corporate teams, I was more siloed. I was working on a particular thing, and then handing it off, and then on the smaller indie teams, like I was doing UI work also and things like that. So that was really eye-opening kind of experience, and getting to understand more thoroughly the different roles on the team. Certainly helpful, especially earlier in my career.
Well, I think we'll be wrapping up. Thank you for the event. It's been really interesting. I try. Hopefully, I'm gonna use another program to edit it. Hopefully, it doesn't crash like the other one before. So yeah, thank you so much. If any of you wants to say anything, or if anyone in the chat wants to ask something else before we close. If not, I think that'll be everything. Have a great day. Thank you. And I'll see you in the next level up.
Thanks, Roger. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for
Bye.
attending.
Also remember to fill out that form, please.